Anyway, okay guys, I don't know if you remember Bobby. We went to Shepherd's Cross last year when we came through Oklahoma and it was way fun. So I had smoke damage in my house and a lot of my wool, I'm afraid, absorbed a lot of smoke. So we're gonna go see if we can find a raw fleece to use, and then we might do some dyeing tonight if we have time, which I think would be super fun. So this is where your workshop is too. When you have the shearing and the.
This is our shearing floor. Right now we're getting ready for the living nativity. So the living nativity will be all back here. It's indoors. It's heated.
See if I can. I don't know that I actually. Oh, there's some. We hadn't got close enough yet to see any of the sheep. So they're a good size. Aren't they pretty?
So we love to do one-on-one classes. That's our preference. And so any time that a person needs a class, we just look at our schedules and find a time that works for both of them. But 3 times a year we also have something called Fiber Fest Weekend, and they can learn everything from washing the fiber all the way through to weaving. And a person can come for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, or just for one segment of 1 day. So lots of different ways that you can put that together.
And the backdrop is really pretty while you're saying that. Isn't that beautiful?
Those are from Woolly Weekend 2016.
Oh, they're just amazing. It sounds so fun. It'll be fun to be around you guys.
You're healing your intestinal tract.
So bones, if you ever wanted to try lamb bones for your bone broth, there you go, Shepherd's Cross.
All kinds of healthy benefits.
And we also got chia seed, which we'd run out of that, and it was a really good price. And we've never tried black walnuts. You can grow black walnuts in Idaho, but we've never tried them. And then this amazing, beautiful fleece that was a really, really good price. I think it was $5 a pound, right?
Yes.
And there's not a whole lot of poundage in one fleece. It actually...
That one was about 2 3/4.
Yeah, so it looks like an enormous amount of wool, but really, it's not that much wool, a whole fleece. So I really like to have a whole fleece because then I have lots and lots to work with. And we're gonna go and do some dyeing. Okay, so I wanted to show you the wool that Bobby and I just dyed yesterday and what we did with it and what it is. So you can see there's a color gradient, light, medium, dark. And the difference in it wasn't that I added a different dye or more or less dye, it was the time that I put it in, although it kind of refers back to more or less dye. This one I put in first, and it had dye for about 5 minutes before I added this one. And I put this one in on the top, and most of the dye had sunk to the bottom. And so it absorbed all of the dye that was left over at the top, but there wasn't as much dye as would have gone into this. And then I did the same thing with this one. It was the last one I added, and I added it to the top. So there's quite a color gradient there. And it'll be super fun to use in blending. I did not bring my blender. I wish I had. I don't know where I would have put it, but it would have been really fun. It's okay though. We can do it with combs. We'll show you how to do it with combs and with brushes and with a blending table. This one has a little bit of vegetable matter in it, so I am going to have to do that from the locks and open it up, and we'll just have to get it a little cleaner, whereas these ones were roving. So I've always liked having laundry in the kitchen. It feels like everything is so close, you can do it all at once. I am hopped up on just a little bit of caffeine. Okay, Jerry is not spelled with one R. R-R. Go look at it. You're the one who just read the book. You should know.
Swipe that. Good outlet. Show that right. Yeah. Where how? I got rats. Yeah.
Okay, so the fluff from the dryer goes into the compost. You can actually put clothing itself in the compost as long as it's cotton or flax or something natural. You don't want to put nylon or anything like that. And the difference between doing laundry on grid and off grid is it's just that it's different. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other as long as your system is good enough. It's not hard to do laundry off grid, and I'm super excited because the company that makes my little tiny washer has now made a spin dryer. It's kind of what it sounds like. And I'm going to show you washing and dyeing some wool. So Bobby and I already did some really pretty green. And the big thing you need to remember is you don't want to have a lot of temperature change or agitation. So from hot to hot to hot to hot, not from hot to cold. And you're not going to be going like this. You're just going to hot, dump out, same hot. You're not going to let the water agitate the wool. Pick over it a little bit, make sure there's no little nubs. This was not a terribly expensive fleece, and I've got some slubs on it. Slubs are not good. It means they went back and did a second cutting. Instead of everything being the same length, you got some bits where they cut some off, then they went back and they wanted it to be shorter, so they went back and cut. That's a no-no among hand spinners. Very bad. But again, this was not expensive wool, and I desperately needed some wool to do some dyeing. And wool can be very cost prohibitive when you get a really nice coated fleece. And what I'm doing right now is mostly just playing with colors, and I'm trying to get something together for my spinning kits. So I am being selective about which part I dye and what I include, because this is it's adequate, but it's not quite as good as I would like it to be. I'm probably going to increase the price of my drop spindle kits here in the next little bit, because I am going to need to go buy some better wool. This one is adequate, and I do include roving, but I like to include something that is more of a raw fleece, more of a the wool in its natural form. I like to include some of that, even if it's already been dyed. I like to put that in. But a normal fleece like this, it's like maybe $10 for the whole thing. And if you get a really nice fleece, you're looking at $160 for the fleece. You're paying about $60 a pound for the fleece. So there's a huge difference in cost, and what I have been using is just my old fleece that I had from a friend that was really nice, but it had not been expensive. And what I'm looking at getting is really, really nice and gorgeous and perfect, and so it's going to be really expensive. So I'm going to have to take the price of the drop spindle kits up a little. So if you want one of the drop spindle kits with this not perfect wool at the lower price, make sure to go get it now. And again, the wool goes in compost. Yes, honey.
There he goes. Thanks, you two. Good luck, kid. We believe in you.
Wonder, you know, I shear all my animals myself, and I'm not a very big woman, and you know, these aren't even yearlings yet, and so you know, the adult size is like, they're like, you know, 280. They can be 280, 300 pounds. I know. I used to work. I didn't get dogs until I'd been doing this for like, I want to say 5 years before I got dogs. And I was a lot thinner then because I had to rope them. I had to rope the sheep. Like, it was crazy. And I remember when I was looking for a dog, I told the lady in Lacey, the one that had Lacey, I told her I was embarrassed, but I said, you know, I have to rope my sheep. And she was like, oh my God, you need this dog more than, because this was her dog that she worked with. And she said, but you needed her more than I did because you were roping your sheep. And get out. So, and then these are of course colored, you know, natural colored Wensleydales, but I love them. So I have Teeswater, Wensleydale, and Corriedales. Those are the breeds that I have. And the Teeswaters, you can tell that. And then there are some crosses, but the Teeswaters have the mottled faces, like that one right there.
Some when I got my scrap box that was for my live show with you, and it was like butter. Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, that actually feels lofty like alpaca. I actually, when I was doing one of my workshops in New Jersey, the person was an alpaca breeder, and a bunch of people were alpaca breeders that took my class, that were taking the workshop, and that they actually didn't know me. And I usually do a test, not to embarrass people, but it's for their own, just to show them how much they've learned from the beginning of the class to the end, like a marker, right? So I put a bunch of fleeces out on the table, and none of them are marked, and none of them are marked in my bags, but there's like 20 of them, and I lay them out, and then I, you know, explain some characteristics about, you know, different categorizations of wool, and then I will put wool that is like alpaca, and all the alpaca people, except for one, thought it was alpaca, but it was wool. But I told them, I said, I'm not throwing a red herring. There's no red herrings. So they should have known that there wouldn't be alpaca if I was talking about wool. And but the one way to tell, and the reason why I do that is because it's happened to me, and the way to tell if you ever can't, because sometimes there are alpacas that are really crimpy and they're just lofty, and you're just like, there's no way that this is alpaca because of the crimp, is you get them wet. And the one that dries the fastest is the wool. Everything I have, I make color with. Here, look at this one. And this one, because I figured out how to put in them. Is it crazy? This is wool.
And how long have you been doing this? This particular art?
This probably a month. But once you like understand, like dyeing from the perspective of how they work on fibers, like, and how they interact with each other, then it's not hard to, it's really not. It would be like the equivalent of somebody being a painter with oil and then deciding they're going to do watercolor. It's like it's all, once you understand the medium, which takes not very long. Once you're an expert in one area, it's really easy to go into other areas.
Okay, so you know that point of day when you're like, did I brush my hair today? I know I washed my face, but did I brush my hair? I'm at that point. So at Shepherd's Cross, we got 2 packages of lamb bones, which I love lamb as long as it's grass-fed. I really don't like corn-fed lamb. I think it's so greasy and nasty. But a package this size would have cost me anywhere between $16 and $22 if it had been lamb, just meat. And so it's awesome to be able to get fresh bones because you can make bone broth with it. There's still meat in there, but you're getting all this wonderful mineral boost from the bones themselves. And so I'm going to make a really good soup out of this. I want to use cold water, not hot water, so cold water in the pan. Cold water. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and open up these bones. So any of you who know a really great mechanic in the Tulsa area, we have a bearing in the differential that is going out. We're not going to drive it. Now that we know what it is, we're not going to drive it. We're going to take it into the shop. But we haven't really heard of one that is really reputable. Okay, so lamb bones. And there we go. When you do a bone broth, a bone soup, you don't actually have to have a lot of meat in it to have a lot of flavor because the flavor comes from the bones. And even though it doesn't have big chunks of meat in it, you don't miss that. You're equally full because of how much nutrition goes into the broth. There we go. So there are our beginner ingredients. So you're not going to chop them. You're just going to rough cut them and put them in. This is my mom's garlic. We did have garlic on our property before we left, but the renter likes garlic as well, so we left the garlic with them. We ate what we wanted to fresh while we were there. But for any storage garlic, we left it with the renters. What I kind of want to do is put the whole onion in. It's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm in that kind of a mood. Okay, so I'm not going to put the pressure cooker setting on, but I'm just going to put the lid on nice and wait for it to get started. These are dyeing tools. I want to make sure I don't have them anywhere that it could be confused with good let's use this tools. You don't want to use anything that's had that dye in it for cooking. So with any bone broth, I have taken out things that were cooking in it overnight. It has had a really nice long cook. I've removed the meat and put it back into the soup, but everything else is coming out. And if you had a dog or a cat or something, cats don't do well with onions, so that's something to watch out for. But this is the broth that's left over, and it's very rich and very brown and very thick. And what I'm going to add to it our potatoes, carrots, and onions. I'm going to cut them up and chop them this time instead of leaving them whole. And we're going to add them to the soup, and that's what we have for lunch. It's 10:45, so we will be done by noon. It'll take about an hour and 15 minutes for it to cook. And if I wanted to make something separate to go with it, like biscuits or something, I would start it about half an hour before the soup was done.
Hey guys, come in. We're eating lamb fat right now.
Hi guys.
Watch.
Do not forget about your marrow bones. Any bones that have marrow in them. You want to suck the marrow out like this. With these you need to use the pointy end of like a fork or something. You don't want to miss it. It's so good for you. It has so many minerals. It used to be that the reason they gave gelatin, jello, to people in hospitals was because it was full of protein, and it was made out of what came out of bones. Nowadays, it's made out of the same thing, but then they add a whole bunch of sugar and artificial colors and sweeteners and that kind of thing, and so it's not really good for you anymore. But the stuff that comes from these heals everything. They're amazing food. Now, if you get a corn-fed animal, these are not going to taste good. A grass-fed animal that never has corn is going to have wonderful, sweet, nutty marrow. A corn-fed animal is going to have really greasy marrow that you don't want to eat. So, Shepherd's Cross has amazing lamb, and this was not expensive. I know it does not look very appetizing. Bone broth is not something that is necessarily a pretty food, but it is a very hearty food, and it is very inexpensive food because all you're taking is leftovers from another meal and some more fresh vegetables, and voila, you have something that it'll probably see us through 2 meals, or at least 1 lunch, and then leftovers for tomorrow. Okay, so the soup is ready and it smells amazing. Now what you're going to notice about all bone broths is that the broth is really thick and really brown, and it all looks everything looks the same. It's going to be brown, it's going to be thick, and if you let it cool, it's going to turn into a gel. And that's from the bones. And so I'm going to call everybody in and we're going to eat. My favorite thing to add into pretty much anything savory is kimchi. I made kimchi the first day that we got home, the first full day, and I only made 1 cabbage worth, and I should have made a lot more because I'm going through it really fast. Nobody else in the family eats it, but it adds, it's like a cheese replacement. The crunch plus the flavor reminds me of cheese, even though the crunch is really, okay, so it's like the crunch is from really fresh vegetables, but the cheese is the savoriness of cheese. But the flavor is the savoriness of cheese. So it's my favorite food, and I put a lot on, and I pour the juice in, and it is so good. Better? Okay, so there is our dye, our 2 dyes that we've used so far. And because I'm over dyeing over a dark fleece on both of them, the color is going to be different, but I like it when we have a gradient to the dye rather than all one block, because then it's, to my mind, it's more fun to spin. So Shepherd's Cross has adequate wool. It's not fantastic. It's good for beginners. It doesn't have a huge amount of vegetable matter in it. I would always recommend getting the highest quality wool that you can, but for playing with, as far as dye and felting, Shepherd's Cross is fantastic for felting. So hopefully you enjoy the projects that we're going to make with this.
in our shop we have a lot of consignor items where local artisans will bring their items in and sell them. And we also have items from all over the world. We have items from Thailand and Romania, Kyrgyzstan, Uganda, all kinds of places like that. So, and we have soap, natural soaps. So we have natural live soaps and natural goat's milk soaps. We also offer these neat little gifty soaps that are wool wrapped live soap. So all you have to do is get it wet and it'll lather up and you can use it. It works great on your face and if it's clean. This is our scarf selection that are all made by local artisans. We also have some little shawls that are made here.
Oh, that's pretty. And this is woven, not knit?
Yeah, that's woven, yes. This is a woven shawl made back in our looms in the fiber mill.
And this one is crochet?
That one is crochet.
That is pretty. I like those colors.
Yes.
Is this acrylic?
That is probably acrylic, but these shawls up here are wool. We have
So you probably have a difference in price range. Like acrylic is going to be less expensive.
Yes.
The fully wool are going to
Yes.
be more expensive. Isn't that pretty? That is beautiful.
that one can also be a lavender.
Oh, it's just gorgeous. How fun. I know, the paintings are my favorite part. That's what I'm going to ask Granny for Christmas. Are these quilt bats or roving?
Those are roving. Those are about 3/4 of a pound.
And then there's your colored roving
Colored
bats.
roving and bats, yes. There's roving and bats listed.
And I love the knitting bowls.
Those are made by local artisans as well.
They're fantastic.
We have another one.
That is amazing. You should make something like that. And then you have your fleet, your,
Have a large selection in the range of price of $79.
oh, they're beautiful. And then the skulls.
Yes.
Oh, they're beautiful.
We don't like to waste anything, so we try to recycle.
Are they out here or in Arizona? Oh, look at the color on this.
And this does not raised on corn. This is grass-fed,
Grass-fed. Okay.
I should have said, I should have known for help.
We'll have to pick up a couple packages to take home.
It's a lamb mixture. Makes seasoning lamb easy.
What fragrance is that?
Lavender, cinnamon, clove.
This is
But she
awesome.
is still able to provide for her family using the wool that she purchases.
They're beautiful.
They are.
I love that. I like the texture that the nubs give.
Yes.
Because you can see it's not perfectly spun. It's rough spun with these little nubs on it, which add texture
Yes.
and make it lofty instead
Yes.
of being a tight spun.
Yes.
So-
They're amazing.
Yeah, so it adds not durability. What's the word? It adds function.
Yes.
If they had fine spun this yarn, it would be very tight and very thin, but because it's bulky spun with those nubs, it's going to feel cushiony on your feet when you walk on it.
Yes.
Silk purses from Thailand. And again, handmade?
Handmade, yes. And 100% of the proceeds from those goes back to them.
That's beautiful. Oh, wow.
This is made in Romania.
And what's the fiber? It's
Wool.
And do you know what blend? It's like a Hare.
They have a, I can't pronounce the breed of sheep that they are. I think it's on the card. I can't pronounce it. It's spelled Tsigai.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so they actually weave it, and then they do this process where after it's been woven, they wash it, and it kind of gives it this slightly felted appearance.
It's gorgeous.
We have 2 this size. One has got red on it, and then we have 2 that are larger. Can also be used as blankets.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's obvious it's more of a hair sheep than not.
Yes,
but it's
definitely more
very
hairy.
soft.
Yes.
Are you going to yell at me if I put them on the floor?
Nope.
Because that is just so stinking cute.
Minberg was able to actually bring them herself.
Oh, they're so stinking cute. Like a little church bag type of bag. So charming.
It has a tic-tac-toe board that can come out, as well as the X's and O's. Little pegs, like this one's is bears and hearts, and they just kind of poke in like that, and you play tic-tac-toe that way.
I would have a hard time working here.
Oh, yeah, I've already bought like 4 of those pecan crunches.
Oh, I bet. That looks so good. Okay, so this is the fleece that we picked. It's really pretty. I love how open the fleece is. It means for hand spinning, and even if I just wanted to spin from the lock, this would be really easy because it's not clumped up into individual locks. It's really open and really, really nice and clean. You can see you've got a little bit of more of a lock here, but you don't see any manure on it. You don't see a lot of vegetable matter in it. It's just in really good shape, so I'm super excited.